Okay.
And I will join in between.
Okay.
I'll sort of start. Okay, I'll call you in 2 minutes. Yes, sir. Okay.
Rubina ma'am, you can start. Leena madam will start. Madam will join.
Okay.
All of you unmute. All of you mute your device, audio device. Start, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon to all of you. I'm really very thankful for joining this webinar. My name is Rubina Shah from CSE Department of Shreyas Engineering College. And now I request to the principal sir, welcome our resource person, Dr. Leena ma'am and Dr. Seema Shah ma'am.
Okay. So, good afternoon to all present in this webinar. And first of all, I would like to welcome all the student participants, faculty members, and today's resource person, Madam Professor Leena Nadkar and Madam Dr. Seema Shah. Both will talk on this blockchain technology. And you know that this topic is important as a part of requirement for having more security. Student friends, you are knowing that right now bank accounts are hacked and there are many frauds in banking sector, as well as cyber crimes are also there. Many other cyber crimes are also there. And for that, we require more secure and safe programming. And in this direction, always inventions are required, new technologies are required. Whatever I know, as per that, this blockchain technology is also provides more secure solutions, because itself name indicates it is a chain of blocks. It is a chain of blocks, and one block is connected or linked with information of earlier block, and definitely that will provide more security. I hope that this is a read of time. My dear students, you are at home, I know that, and being at home also, you are excited and you are doing something and keeping vibrant. This is good thing. Along with this, I will appeal my students, be regular in exercise, pranayam and yoga, and be safe and maintain yourself. In this COVID situation also, we have to be happy and healthy, but don't forget to take the efforts. Work continuously, we have to remain working. Though at home, we cannot sit idle. We have to work continuously for our development and society and the nation altogether. We are all working for that common goal. Teachers and students, all mentors, we work for that. Today's experts, Dr. Seema Shah madam and Dr. Professor Leena Nadkar will explain you in detail about this. I welcome you both. Also, I would like to congratulate HOD of the department, Professor Raj Chirchi, and the coordinators, Rubina Shah and Rubangi madam, for organizing this program. I would like to appeal and request my students to take maximum benefit and participation in this webinar. Welcome once again to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now I request to our HOD Iraj Chichi sir to introduce our resource person to our participant. Please, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So it's an immense pleasure to introduce to you all regarding today's two eminent speakers. So before that, I thank our respected principal, sir, Dr. R.S. Pawar, sir, for giving a chance to all the students with such a spectacular technology sort of things. And in all departments, our college is doing these webinars every week. So this is our college's privilege that to have such a wonderful leader. So I thank sir for giving this opportunity to all to conduct and be in always in technology. So now I would like to introduce the first eminent speaker, Dr. Seema Shah ma'am. So Dr. Seema Shah is currently working as Director BTech Integrated Program, Mukesh Patil School of Technology Management and Engineering, University Mumbai. So she was formerly head of the Department of Computer Engineering branch, as well as former principal of Vidyalankar Institute of Technology. Her doctoral work is in the area of distributed shared memory on a grid of clustered machines. Her teaching experience spans 30 plus years along with guiding undergraduate, postgraduate, and doctoral students. She has published 150 plus technical papers, authored several technical books, including Distributed Computing, published by Oxford University Press, and she is the recipient of many awards, including the Best Teacher Award. She has 21,000 followers at Quora, and she has courses published on Udemy on blockchain and digital twins, as well as copyright registered in the above domain. She has also given talks on blockchain at SNDT, CDAC, Juhu, Kargar, Patkar, Varda College, Springboard, etc. So this is all about Dr. Seema Shah ma'am. So we are very much thankful to ma'am that she has spent her precious time to share her knowledge with our student. So next eminent speaker, today's eminent speaker is Leena Nadkar ma'am. So that is Leena Nadkar ma'am is pursuing her PhD in blockchain domain from Mukesh Patil School of Technology, Management and Engineering, NMIMS University, Mumbai. So along with Dr. Seema Shah, she has published technical papers on blockchain, as well as they have courses on Udemy about blockchain and digital twins. So she has also registered copyrights of blockchain and digital twin documents.
सर मराठी बोला ना ते इंग्रजी कळत नाही.
Leena has won the Students Ambassador Award 2019 while pursuing MTech. So she has also given talks on blockchain in various colleges. And because of today's two eminent speaker, we are very much happy that, and we can assure that our student will be acquainted with the technical aspects of blockchain. So this is all about the today's session. So now I request Professor Rubina Shah ma'am to carry on with further sessions.
Thank you, sir. Now, I love to call to the Dr. Leena Nadkar ma'am. So, please proceed. And I request all the students, whatever query you have, you can ask after the session. And also fill the feedback form. At that time, you will get automatically e-certificate on your Leena Nadkar, you please continue.
So first of all, thank you so much for giving this opportunity. Dr. Seema Shah wasn't able to join us at this moment, but as soon as her connection issue is solved, like she will be joining the meeting. And I would like to thank first of all Principal Sir and HOD Sir for giving this opportunity. So I'll share my screen. Is my screen visible in the full screen mode?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So as our topic goes, an insight into blockchain technology. these days we are coming across a lot of news in social media, like about the cryptocurrencies, about NFTs, and a lot of things are happening in the blockchain space. So we'll further go today and try to understand that what exactly is blockchain. It is not something which is just related to cryptocurrency or Bitcoin. Blockchain has a very wide scope and it is going to play a very important role in decentralized internet as well. So these are the session contents. Okay, so we'll start with the industrial revolution. When we talk about the industrial revolution, it started with mechanization, then industry revolution 2.0. 2.0 was about electrification. Then we went for automation. After that, the industry revolution 3.5, that is all about globalization. And today, where we are, so we are today currently in industrial revolution 4.0, which talks about digitalization. So over here in digitalization, what is the expected outcome? That is that the world of connected devices.
मॅडम
So,
प्लीज मराठीत बोला.
huh? Hello?
मराठीत कसं बोलता येईल रे?
Dear students, Arjun, if you are not getting, please leave the meeting. Arjun,
नो मैडम, तसं मैडम वैसा नहीं है, उसको धीरे धीरे समझ में आएगा. लेट हिम अटेंड. बेटा सुनते रहो, धीरे धीरे समझ में आएगा. ओके
ओके सर.
Okay, I'll go slowly. So when we talk about industrial revolution 4.0, so that is about digitalization. What do we mean by digitalization? So world of connected devices. Today we are using number of devices, right? So it might be something for smart home, or it might be about our laptops, mobiles. So everything needs to be connected together. And which are the technologies which are going to play an important role over here? So that is going to be IoT, AI, machine learning, as well as blockchain. Okay. And from industry 4.0, when we are going to move to 5.0, that is going to be an era of personalization, which is going to be a cooperation between man and machine. So over here, blockchain is going to act as an important link. Then this is one of the diagram which we have taken from Gartner. So Gartner, Forrester, these are the companies which keep you updated about how a particular technology would be performing in the near future. So and this is accepted globally. So what Gartner says is that the enabling of the technology of blockchain had started in 2010. Between 2010 to 20, this last decade period, that was about getting inspired by blockchain. And the next one, so like from 2020 to 30, the next decade, it is going to be about like blockchain actually being a mainstream technology. So the way we are using all the technologies today, whether it might be about the web development, or it might be about machine learning, or cloud computing, we have become well versed with these technologies, and it is a part of our daily life. So in the same way, in the next decade, blockchain is going to be part of your daily life. And then further, after 2030, it would be an era of enhanced blockchain. Okay. So now coming to the foundational concepts. So which are the things that we need to understand first before we go ahead with blockchain? First thing is, what do you mean by centralized database? So say we are using YouTube, okay, or we are using someone has gone and uploaded a video on YouTube. We all are enjoying it, we are watching it. But tomorrow, like if that person decides that he wants to take out that video from YouTube, or government decides to ban YouTube, then in that case, what happens? So you don't have access to that particular video like anymore, or that might be even about like any document, or suppose like Wikipedia. Wikipedia is also held by a centralized authority, right? So if tomorrow some of the pages deleted or the contents are changed, you cannot have the access to the original ones. So what do you mean by centralized is the basic client server architecture which we follow. So if someone decides to take it out, the central authority, then the access is lost. in case of distributed, now what you mean is, so distributed can be a decentralized technology as well as centralized. So something like Google Drive, okay, or Google data centers, Facebook data centers, even though they are held by a single authority. So Facebook is like owned by, I mean, even though it's owned by a single authority, or Google is held by a single authority, but they have their data centers at various places, and all these multiple computers or multiple servers work together and they appear as one entity. Okay, so that is what is distributed. And what do you mean by decentralized? So in over here in decentralized, a single person is not going to be owner of a data. Our data is going to be shared by multiple nodes. So tomorrow we already have, like, if various D apps, what do you call as D app is decentralized apps. So like YouTube, there is something called as DTube also. Okay, over there, if you're uploading something, so it is not owned by a single person. So if you decide to take down something, it will be available with one or other node for sure. In the same way, for the browsing, if someone of you might have heard about DuckDuckGo, so that is also like a search engine which is used. That is a decentralized network. Okay. And now what does blockchain follow? So what blockchain follows is a distributed decentralized network. So it is going to be distributed across various nodes, across the various servers, as well as it's not going to be not a single authority is going to have a control over it. So it's going to be decentralized in nature. Okay. Then coming to what is blockchain. So a simple definition about blockchain, what it talks about is, it is a peer-to-peer distributed decentralized ledger. Now breaking it, what does it mean? So if previously, if you all might have heard about BitTorrent, you all might be downloading some movies or something. So in that case, what was happening? Different bits are downloaded from different computers or different different servers, right? So here, not a there is no centralized authority, whereas it is going to be in a peer-to-peer network. Different nodes can control it. After that, it is distributed. So it is going to be across different nodes and decentralized. So no single authority. It is cryptographically secure. What does that mean is, whatever data is entered in blockchain, it is hash data. So hashing, there are different types of hashings which are there, and hash is a one-way function. So any new data that is getting added to blockchain, it consists of like a hash code of the previous data. So in that way, it is cryptographically secure. So if someone wants to go and make some change in between in a blockchain, then it is not possible. So it cannot be modified in between. So you can only go on attending the data. So that is why it is said append only. That is, you can only add new data. You cannot modify the data, or you cannot delete the data. Then it is immutable. What do you mean by immutable? So once the data has been put in blockchain, it cannot be changed by anyone, and you can have a different versioning for that. But again, there needs to be a consensus. What do you mean by consensus? So say a blockchain network, for example, consists of 7 people in a network. So a maximum voting kind of system that is followed. So out of 7, 6 or whatever the percentage has been decided, those number of people need to agree to make a new versioning for the data. So it is updatable only via consensus among the peers. What is blockchain going to do? So it is going to successfully tackle the important aspects of error, fraud, misinterpretation, and intermediaries. So say if I want to go and rent a house, okay, what is the ideal thing that I would do is, I will go to some estate agent and he will show around the houses. I'll purchase it. But in between, what is happening? I need to pay commission to this estate agent, to a third party or an intermediary. Okay. Why do I need to pay this commission? Because the buyer and seller, there is no trust among them. I don't know who the seller is. I have no idea about him. So this particular estate agent is meant for this trust establishing purposes, and for that thing, he gets his commission in between. Okay. So over here, if we have blockchain, in blockchain, what is happening? Once the data is added or once something is there, it is immutable. No one can change. In such cases, we don't require an intermediary in between. so we can efficiently work even in a trustless environment. So what is blockchain? It is an open distributed ledger. Okay, what do you mean by ledger is, in accounting also there are ledgers. So each and every entry is made. So say one block is added, some transaction is done, something has happened. So each and every entry along with timestamp is made over there. So that is why it is called as a ledger. So what is blockchain? It's an open distributed ledger that can record the transactions between two parties efficiently in a verifiable and permanent way. So once something has been recorded in blockchain, it is forever. After that, this is the history of blockchain. So when we talk about blockchain, it is always like that suddenly there was a person, Satoshi Nakamoto, and he decided to create Bitcoin. But it is not exactly like that. The concepts which were taken in account when Bitcoin was created or proposed, those concepts have already have been existing since a long time. So Ralph had proposed Merkle tree, which is one of the basic structure in blockchain, in 1979. Then came in the concept of distributed computing in 1990. Then the timestamping of digital documents was proposed by Harbor Stronetta in 1991. Then Nick Szabó, he proposed the smart contracts. So smart contracts is again one of the fundamental technology which both was actually realized after blockchain came in picture. Okay, so smart contracts were already there, like almost a decade before Bitcoin came into picture, but they were not really used in practical approach. After that, in 2009, Satoshi Nakamoto created the first Bitcoin transaction was done, and he wrote the paper about Bitcoin in 2008. After that, in 2011-12, the cryptocurrency is deployed in application for cash. So the DApp era started. Then the financial transactions began in 2012 and 13. After in 13 and 14, the blockchain technology was started being looked upon beyond the financial market. So actually this term blockchain, it wasn't there when Bitcoin paper was written. It was just called as a chain of blocks. But it was in 2012 that this term blockchain was actually conceptualized. After that, in 2014 and 15, smart contracts were deployed on blockchain. In 15-16, the permission blockchain network solutions started. So till here, what we had realized is that blockchain can be used for the public networks, but how it can be used for the enterprise network, business solutions in a permissioned environment. So that research started in 15-16. Then 16-20 was about the market consolidation, about proof of concept, the pilot projects of blockchain. And now blockchain has entered into a mainstream technology. So now it is not just a something where not a research technology, but people have started implementing it. There are various DApps which are available, and it is slowly becoming a part of industry. And what is 2025 and beyond? So that is for blockchain maturity. Okay, now again, as I told you previously, if we want to add something in blockchain, we need, since it's a decentralized technology. Okay, now understanding a difference over here. See, whenever there is a centralized technology, a company is there, an organization is there, which can take the decisions. So if Mark Zuckerberg decides he wants to stop Facebook, he wants to stop with whatever his committee is. Okay, because it's a centralized technology. Same thing goes with Google. But when we talk about a decentralized technology, a single person cannot take any decisions. It has to be a mutual agreement between everyone who is present in the network. Okay, that's why it is called as a decentralized technology. So in that case, whether it's centralized or decentralized, we always need to come to a proper conclusion, a final conclusion, or a final state of blockchain. So how is that decided? So for that purpose, for coming to a decision in blockchain, what we have is consensus mechanisms. Okay, so there are many consensus mechanisms which are there, and like I have a chart which talks almost about 76 consensus mechanisms being used, but out of that, these three are the popular ones which are being used. Okay, So the first one is called as proof of work. This is being used by Bitcoin. Okay. In Bitcoin, if you have to come to a conclusion, okay, sorry. In Bitcoin, if you have to come to a conclusion, what do you mean by conclusion? That whether a particular block can be accepted in the Bitcoin network or no. So how is that done? So for that, we have something called as mining. So in mining, what does a miner do? He has to find a hash who will be allowed, and the first hash will be allowed to add new block of a new block transaction to the blockchain. So it is a miner who's going to decide whether a block is valid or not. He's going to solve some mathematical proof, and after that, that particular block can be added in blockchain. In the same way, there are other consensus mechanisms also. So the next one is proof of stake. In proof of stake, what it will be? So the person who has like the person, not individual exactly, but I think there is some noise. Okay. So in proof of stake, what it will be that the one who has the higher stake can participate in the network decision. Now, why is it said that higher stake? So that if someone tries to attack the network and like the person with the higher stake, he tries to make a wrong decision, then naturally if the price of Ethereum falls down tomorrow or any kind of coin, then even that person is going to be affected. So that is why the person with the higher stake is allowed to make decision in the network. And the third one of the consensus mechanism, that is called as PBFT. So this follows the one which is there in the distributed system, that it relies on number of nodes to confirm the trust. Once enough number of responses have been reached, the transaction is verified. So say out of 4, if 3 people are saying yes, then the transaction is verified. Then we have different types of blockchain. So on what basis are different types of blockchain decided? So how many members are there in the blockchain network? So whether there are innumerable networks, innumerable people, some limited people, on basis of that, it is decided. Then who can read and write? So how many people have right to actually just view the blockchain, and how many people have right to make changes to it? After that, how is the consensus carried out? So whether it is going to be proof of work, proof of stake, PBFT, something else, based on that, the type is decided. And what are the benefits and challenges? So on basis of that, we can have public blockchain, private blockchain, or consortium or federated blockchain. What do we mean by consortium? So multiple enterprises coming together as a consortium and forming a blockchain. And then we have blockchain as a service. So there can even be cloud-based solutions. So as we have like different cloud applications which are there. So the for even AWS offers, Azure offers blockchain as a service. So over there, cloud-based solutions to build, host, and use the blockchain apps. So this is the same thing what we discussed in the previous one. Now, what are the benefits of having a blockchain? So the direct benefits are it is efficient, secure, reliable, then immutability of record. So once something is entered, it cannot be changed, and there is no single point of failure. So tomorrow, even if there are say 7 nodes in the network, out of that, even if 2 nodes are not available or 2 servers are not available, still the blockchain is not going to be off. It is going to continue to be there. Your data is going to be there. Okay. So there is no single point of failure. Additional benefits is it is transparent. So anyone can verify the correct system. So you can verify something, but you cannot go and make changes to that. Then it is then accountability. So there is traceability of records is there. Then integrity is maintained. After that, cost benefits. So in cost benefits, what are the cost benefits? There is no intermediary. So what we talked about the brokerage right now, previously in the real estate example. So there is no intermediary. So naturally, there is cost benefit. Okay. And the system replication overheads are avoided. So you don't have to go on replicating your data. By default, it is present with the various nodes. That's how the architecture is. And what are the challenges over here? So still
Hello, ma'am.
now the blockchain scalability is a
Lina,
research
ma'am.
area. Yes.
Ma'am, Seema Shah hai, Shah ma'am, Dr. Seema Shah ma'am have joined.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Seema
Ma'am
Shah
is
ma'am.
Yeah.
Seema Shah ma'am has joined, ma'am. Okay.
Ma'am.
Hello, yeah, I'm there. Lina, you continue. I'll take it in the end. Okay?
Okay, fine, ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. I'll join in the end and I'll close with all the remarks and also the QA. I'll be there, sir. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So over here, blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain. So what it uses proof of work. In proof of work, basically what we are doing is we are trying to solve a hash. In that, a lot of electricity is required. Okay, so you require GPUs and a lot of energy consumption happens, which is very high. That is one of the drawbacks. It still has a slow consensus mechanism in case of Bitcoin, not in the case of Ethereum and others. So why a slow consensus? Because you need to be ensured that whatever data that is being put in, that is authentic. Okay, so 10 minutes time is consistently maintained whenever a transaction has to be accepted for Bitcoin. Then there is lack of interoperability among blockchains. So still there is a lot of research which is also going on between how two blockchains can communicate with each other. Then is integration with legacy systems. So how it can be used with our databases, like how we can get the data from SQL or other traditional databases. Then there are no legal or standardized regulations which have still come up in picture for blockchain, and lack of blockchain talent because it is still quite a naive technology. Like it hasn't been explored very much, or it is kind of still developing. So that is why a lack of blockchain talent. This is the architecture of which blockchain follows. So at the basis, now your blockchain, where it is built, so it is built on top of your TCP IP. So what would be there at the base? It will be the TCP IP interconnection. On top of that, we have peer-to-peer network with local storage. So over here, peers can connect with each other and they can send and receive the messages. Then we have virtualization layer, which consists of virtual machine, containers, and dockers. Then blockchain layer. So what is blockchain layer going to contain? So that is going to contain consensus mechanism. How do we come to a conclusion? And what is state machine? That the same copy of blockchain ledger has to be visible for all the nodes. So say if there are 5 nodes, so all the 5 nodes in the network, they need to have the same copy. It cannot be like someone has just 4 blocks, someone has 3 blocks, 5 blocks. That is not allowed. Everyone needs to have a consistent copy. So 5 blocks, to say everyone has the same 5 blocks. So the state machine that is maintained at the blockchain layer. On top of that, we have the blockchain apps, which can be coded in, say, any of these languages: C++, JavaScript, Get, Go, Python, Solidity, Rust. And then we have the UI, where the end user is going to interact. So over here, what is a DApp? It's an application that is run by many users on a decentralized network with trustless or trustful protocols. Okay. Then coming to the next part about we'll just go a little bit into cryptocurrency and see the actual working of blockchain. So over here, what is the difference between the fiat currency, the currency which we use today, and the cryptocurrency? So the currency, fiat currency, which we use today, that is issued by the governments, whereas cryptocurrency, it is generated by the computers. Then fiat currency, it is centralized or monitored by the government. So in our case, RBI, whereas cryptocurrency, it is decentralized. No one can control, as well as it is globally, you can use it. So you don't need a conversion factor from one country to another. It is globally the same price. Whereas over here, if you want to exchange the currency, then whatever the conversion part is, it comes into picture. Then fiat currency, it is a physical medium of exchange, or it can be digital currency as well. Then cryptocurrency, it is only digital medium of exchange. Fiat currency has unlimited supply, whereas cryptocurrency has a limited supply. So in case of Bitcoin, it is 21 million Bitcoins are available. then this is the Bitcoin transaction life cycle. So now how exactly does Bitcoin work? So say there is this person Rob who wants to send 0.3 BTC to a person named Laura. Okay. Now why 0.3 BTC? If you try to go and check the cost of Bitcoin, so you can go for this website, coinmarketcap.com. So over here, if you try to go and check, you can see what is the price of Bitcoin. So this is $37,121, which comes around 28 lakh rupees INR. So that is the cost of one Bitcoin. So how do we transfer Bitcoins? It is not, you're not transferring one Bitcoin, two Bitcoin, you're transferring into 0.0 something. That way the transferring happens. Okay. And this is like how much Bitcoins are left. So over here, if you can see, the maximum supply of Bitcoins, that is 21 million, whereas what is currently there in circulation, that is 18 million. So we are again coming to the part of Bitcoin transaction. So that is why what is being transferred is 0.3 BTC and not the entire Bitcoin. Okay, so how does it happen? Rob will open his Bitcoin wallet. Now there are number of wallets which are available. You might have even seen a few ads coming on television about CoinSwitch, Kuber app, then CoinDCX. So there are different ZepPay. There are different wallets which are available through which you can trade in cryptocurrency. So first of all, you open your wallet, you scan or copy the address. Now, what is this address which is given? So it's a public address or a hash code. Okay, like a public key. And then you scan it or copy it and you enter the amount. So say, what is the amount over here? 0.3 BTC. So that is entered over here. After that, every wallet has its fee transaction. So it wouldn't be the same for all the wallets. It would be different for the different wallets. Some people just charge 0.1 BTC. Some charge 10%. It depends upon the wallet. And then you click on send. So that's it. That is it from the user's point of view. What he has to do is scan the public address, enter the amount, the fee is calculated, and he sends the Bitcoin. After that, at the back end or like at the machine part, what happens is the wallet signs a transaction using the Rob's private key. So every person is going to have his public key and a private key. So how is the transaction going to be encrypted or signed? That is going to be using the private key. After that, the transaction is propagated and validated by the network nodes. So once it has been propagated means it has been sent throughout the network. After that, it is validated by whoever is part of those network nodes. So whoever is there in the network. Over here, the miners include the transaction in the next block to be the mined. So they go on getting the transactions and they keep on including it into the next transaction which needs to be mined. After that, what is mining? So I'll show you with an example also. It is a computational process of calculating a certain hash. So basically, what you have to do is a certain hash needs to be calculated. How it has to be calculated? So there are, when you code it, that time you put that first solve when first three digits are 0 or first 4 digits are 0 in that way. Then new Bitcoins are created. The nodes verify the result and propagate the block. After that, after it has been done, then Laura sees the first confirmation. So this person receives that, okay, this I have received amount from Rob, and new confirmations appear with each new block that is created. So if you try to see the Bitcoin blockchain in detail, then you can see all the transactions which are happening over here. If you go and click on Bitcoin over here, so bitcoin.org. So if you try to see over here the Bitcoin chain, then you can see like all the blocks which are getting added in the network as well. And this entire process, this takes 10 minutes. It has been put for 10 minutes so that only after something has been validated and solved, it is added to the network. And that is called something called as difficulty. So anytime this verification time goes below 10 minutes or beyond 10 minutes, the difficulty level is reduced or increased, and the time is brought to the consistent 10 minutes period. So each and every Bitcoin transaction, 10 minutes are required per transaction. So this is how it works. Now we are not just talking about Bitcoin, any blockchain, whether it is Ethereum, Hyperledger, any blockchain. So what is done is the user registers a transaction request at P1. What is P1? Say there are 4 nodes in the network. Okay, P1, P2, P3, P4. So what the user is going to do, it is going to register a transaction. It might be a cryptocurrency, a smart contract, any record. It is going to be registered over here. After that, if something has to be deployed on blockchain, it is broadcasted to the network by P1 for the verification purpose. So this particular, say I have a piece of art, like I have made some new painting, or okay, and I want to put it on blockchain, or I want to deploy it on blockchain. So that particular painting or art record, that file, I uploaded it on computer, it gets converted into hash code. Okay, after like I encrypt it, a hash code is formed. That hash code is deployed over the network. Then it is given to all the nodes in the network. Okay, so that is broadcasted to the network. Now over here, what is this particular thing, what you're seeing, Genesis block, that is called as a first block in the network. Okay, so that is hard coded when the blockchain was created. After that, whatever is being added, that contains a record of the previous block. But this particular first block, it has been hard coded. So now over here in the network, P2, P3, P4, they all are going to have a copy of my painting. After that, the transaction is received by all the peer nodes, and all the peer nodes validate the transaction. So now they will check whether the transaction which has come in picture, it is authentic or no. Okay. Once it has been authenticated, the mining part is done. Only after that, a particular block is added to the network. So this, so now once it has been added to the network, all the 4 nodes, that is P1, P2, P3, P4, they all are going to have the same copy of data. Okay. And what does each and every block contain? So each and every block contains of a block header. Okay, what is a block header? It is pointed to the previous hash. So if you can see over here, how is the blockchain formed? So block 1, it is going to have hash code of Genesis block. Block 2, it is going to have the hash code of block 1. Block 3 will have the hash code of block 2. So in this way, if we try to make change to block 1, then all the other blocks are going to be affected. Okay. Then after that, what does it have? So it has mining statistics, difficulty level, timestamp, nonce, and then the Merkle tree root. After that, it has a transaction counter. What do you mean by transaction counter? What is the number of, or the unique ID which is given to each and every block? And it has list of transaction. Okay. Before this, just for clarity purpose, what I'll do is I'll just show you all a visual about how the blockchains exactly work. So this particular person, he has already built a demo over here. Anyone who is interested, they can also go and check this. Just give me a minute, I'm sorry. Okay, so over here now, how the blockchain is happening. So say if these are the blocks, okay, block 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they are there in a blockchain. Now over here, if I'm trying to enter some data, so the data that I want to deploy on blockchain, that is high. Okay, now over here, what I have done is I have made a change to all block 1. If I try to make some change to the existing block 1, if you can see, all the blocks over here have turned red. Why have they turned red? Because now this particular block, it was dependent upon the hash of this previous block. This particular block 3, it was dependent upon the hash code of this block. So now if I'm trying to make changes anywhere in between, all the other blocks are also affected. How does this happen? First of all, let's start from here. What is hash? How is hash generated? So say if I have some data hello, if you can see over here, as I'm changing the data, even the hash code is getting changed. So if I say over here hello 1, the hash code changed. If I say hello 13, the hash code is changing. So each and every word, it is going to generate a different hash code. Okay. Now, very rarely are two hash codes going to be same. The collision is going to happen. Else it is going to be a different hash code per data. Then what is block? How is this block managed? So for each and every block in blockchain, we have a block ID. Then we have nonce. Nonce for now, what you can understand is it's a random number which is generated for managing the difficulty level of blockchain. And then there is this data. So if you can see over here, as I'm going on changing the data over here, the hash code over here is also getting affected. Okay. If I click over here on mine, then what is happening is after it has been mined, it has been included in the blockchain. So this was for just a single block. Whereas in blockchain, what happens is if I try to add a new data over here to block 5, okay, I'm adding. So over here, what happened? Now only this particular block turned red. Why? Because this is the last block, right? After this, I can add some data and I can change over here. But if I try to make some changes in between, then even the block after that is also affected. So this is the part which gives us the security of blockchain. Then coming to the next part, that is the contracts. So smart contracts is something which has become a fundamental part of blockchain today. Before going for the smart contracts, we'll shortly see what do you mean by traditional contract. Traditional contract is any legal contract or any contract that we have. So in traditional contract, what do we have? There are parties which, how does the contract creation happen? So say I want to buy a house. Okay. So if I want to buy a house, there will be a meeting between the buyer, seller and an estate agent. So what are they? Two parties, that is the buyer and seller, they come together, they discuss the terms, a contract is drafted. When the contract is executed, so this is as per the regulations, okay? When the contract is executed, what do we have? We have a third party mediator. So say estate agent in this case, then the contract is signed by both the parties and even the estate agent, and the conditions are executed. Okay, so if there is some issue that is happening, I know whom to go to. Like a third party can be considered, and whatever is there on the legal paper. But in this, what is the issue? Lots of paper is required. It is prone to tampering. So someone can go and try to change the original document or forge the signatures. This can happen. So the acceptance might not be accurate. Now coming to the smart contract. So basically what happens in smart contract is, to talk about it in simple terms, what is a smart contract? It is an if-else code. Okay, so what we write like in a programming language, if an event happens, then do this. If it doesn't happen, then the else part. Else if go to something else. So simple contract with functions and if-else statements which we are creating, so that someone needs to abide to a particular thing that is mentioned in the contract. Now, how does it happen? So a contract is written as code into blockchain. Okay. Whenever an event is happening, what can be the event? It can be like, say some goods have been delivered. Okay. If it's before the expiry date, if it's on the date of delivery, then what should happen? So say that company, the manufacturer has to be paid. So you cannot keep someone waiting for the payment. Ki kal dunga, baad mein hoga. It is not that way. As soon as the delivery happens, automatically the assets are released from your bank. That is how you code the smart contract. And the regulators can study the immutable transaction record to understand all the activity that has taken place. So again, when you go to file the income tax or the company audits which happen, everything is crystal clear. You cannot forge any data even for the companies. Like something, you draft a contract, whenever an event happens, you abide by it, the assets are released on time, and even the audit is crystal clear. So that is like the value which smart contract would be adding. So this is one of the example of smart contract for music industry. Say there is some singer, he wants to publish his information on blockchain. So he has recorded a song. The song is, you encrypt it using hash code. Okay? The hash of that particular thing, it is propagated on blockchain. And now use policy for the registered music file are written into the smart contracts. So whenever, what could be the contract for that? That whenever someone tries to publish that file anywhere on internet or tries to reuse it, that time automatically the royalty is transferred to the original owner of the music file. Okay, so over here, like we see on YouTube, many things are available which are not published by the original authors. Okay, so this thing can be avoided with smart contract in picture. So whenever someone tries to use the original work or the copied work, whatever for the music file, that time the fees are transferred instantly, transparently, and automatically. And it provides an open, transparent, and reliable platform for sharing the music files. So this is not just related to the music files. It can be for the artwork. It can be for the books, anything. Okay. So again, smart contract and blockchain, they are going to play a very important role in the copyright and the patent industry as well. Then we have benefits of smart contract. So what are the benefits of smart contract? It is online. Okay, it's an automated process. It is cheaper since we don't require third parties in between. It reduces the reliance on the trusted intermediaries. You don't need to go to an estate agent to buy the house. You go for Airbnb, you go for any other decentralized application, and you can do this part. Immutable after it is deployed on blockchain. So once once a smart contract has been deployed on blockchain, no one can make any changes to the blockchain. So one of a very good benefit, whenever any kind of legal inheritance or the wills which are being written, like so after a person's death, immediately the assets are transferred to the rightful owner. You cannot have a case going on that. So it is immutable. Once something is deployed on blockchain, it is there forever. And it guarantees a greater degree of security. Okay, so this is what a smart contract life cycle looks like. We have contract creation and execution. So the same way how we had it for traditional contract, now for smart contract. Sorry. Okay, so first, how do you go? You create a contract code, input the logic for agreement into the code. So what do you mean by input the logic over here? So when a particular event should be triggered, you have to write that. So say in case of house, okay, for estate agency, you can say that whenever someone is going to start living in the house, from that particular time your months are going to be calculated, or as soon as the agreement is done, then after 11 months what happens. So you can have events for that. The code is encrypted and inserted into a public chain, that is your blockchain. Then the contract execution, how does it happen? So when the event initiates, the smart contract execution starts. So whenever the event will be triggered, that time the execution of smart contract will happen. The contract is self-executed. The transaction is validated by the third party. Then the assets, the settlement is done. All the parties are notified. The blockchain is updated. And now the transaction is immutable. So this is as per the compliance, okay, the regulator. And once the transaction is immutable, so no one can go and challenge it or make any changes to that. And then the final part of smart contract, what we have is oracles. So what do you mean by oracles is that till now what we are talking about is we are inserting the data in blockchain. Like maybe we are deploying something on blockchain, adding something manually or digitally, whatever it is. But always this data, it is not something what we are directly going to enter. It might be something which is coming from a third party. So what do you mean by third party? So say I want to have a supply chain for, and take an example of supply chain. So there is something which has been started by Nestle. So what Nestle says is that you can track from food to farm. Okay, what do you mean by food to farm? So if I'm eating a particular mango, then I should know that from which farm has it come. So for me to know from which farm has it come, there needs to be censored data at each and every point. So it can be like from which truck has been it traveling, from where was it stored, how has it reached to a particular supermarket, from which supermarket is it coming to me. So this sensor data, how do you get it? So that is with the help of oracles. So the oracles can help you to add or feed this data to your smart contracts. So what is Oracle? Electronic data that is required from outside world, which is relevant to the contractual agreement. Okay, so for example, input from big data applications and IoT. Okay, I can go ahead, right? Everyone is okay till here? Fine. So now coming to the actual part, that what is the difference between the web app which we have been following till now, and what would be the difference with the D app, like how the architecture would be different. So in web app, ideally what we have is the user directly interacts with the UI. Okay, so any kind of front end, it might be some mobile application, some web application, any other form. Then behind that, what we have is web server, application server, database server. Okay, but when we talk about D app, then how does the interaction happen? So over here, the user will be interacting with its normal HTML, CSS, JS. Okay, so he wouldn't be basically coming to know the difference. Then instead of application server and database server, what we are going to have is we are going to have a decentralized backend. So here the example has been taken for Ethereum. It can be any other blockchain. So it can be a blockchain which has been created from scratch. It can be a Hyperledger blockchain, any other blockchain. So this is which is going to be replacing the database and the server side scripting. And then these are the, so there are many blockchain platforms which are available today, but we have just taken an example of the popular ones. So we have Ethereum, Hyperledger, Quorum, Corda, and IOTA. These are the popular ones. Mainly what is being used is Ethereum and Hyperledger to the maximum, maximum people what they are using. Then which are the programming languages which they follow? So Ethereum popularly uses Solidity. It also uses Serpent and LLM, but then popularly Solidity. Consensus mechanism which is being used is proof of work, and it is best suited for creating public decentralized apps with smart contracts. So whenever you want to go for a public chain, the first choice is Ethereum. If it is like a private network for a business network or enterprise, then what do you go for is Hyperledger. Okay, and over here, what are the different frameworks? So you have Fabric, Sawtooth, Burrow, Iroha, Indy. You can go and read about it as per your convenience. So these are like for the different purposes, they have given different frameworks. So it can be like whenever you like what is your importance. So whenever you want to go for a scalable network, you go for Sawtooth. If it's like a normal enterprise application, we go for Fabric. When it is mobile applications, we go for Iroha. Identity management, Indy. So whatever is your purpose of creating a particular D app, as per that, and also whether it's a public network or a permission network, as per that, you can go for a particular platform. So now Ethereum ecosystem. Okay, so now this is like Ethereum ecosystem. What does it consist of? So Ethereum is a platform for blockchain. Okay, the languages which Ethereum allows you to use, that is Solidity, Serpent, Triple L, and Mutin. Compiler which it uses is SOLC. Then which IDE is available? What do you mean by IDE? So integrated development environment which it provides, that is Solidity, browser Solidity. Then it is Ethereum Studio, Mix, Atom, and Remix Debugger. So we'll see a short demo right now that will be on Remix Debugger. Then it has different tools and libraries. So Dapple, Solograph, Pudding, Web3. Web3 is one of the famous one. So what does it, what do these tools or library do basically? So it allows you to interact with local or the remote Ethereum. You need something in between, right? An establishing point. So that is what these tools and libraries will act as. And then you have a framework. So what is a framework? So instead of like going and doing everything from scratch, so I'm going to sit and write my index.html file, the CSS file, JavaScript file. So instead of that, an entire setup is given to you and you need to just go and make changes to those particular files. So you have a framework which has been created for you. So like that, Truffle, Embark, Dapple, they gave you frameworks for Ethereum. Okay. So I'll just quickly go through a demo for Ethereum for a understanding of like how the smart contracts look like. Okay. If like the students who want to start for Ethereum development, this is one of the best starting point, that is going to Remix ID. Okay, so you can go for remix.ethereum.org. You don't need to install anything specifically over here to start with. First thing is it's a like a browser ID, so directly just go for remix.ethereum.org. Then over here, after going over here, I'll zoom. So here it will first of all ask you to select a language. So you can go and click on Solidity. Okay, once you're going and clicking on Solidity, then this file explorer is available. Okay, so over here in this file explorer, you can create a new workspace. So click over here on create, and you can give any name to the workspace you want. I'm just keeping it as it is, and say okay. After a workspace has been created, if you can see over here, these folders have been auto-generated. I have not done anything over here. One is the contract folder, the scripts folder, and the test folder. Okay, so I'll click over here on storage.sol. So by default, whenever you're creating anything new, these contracts are going to be available over here. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to explain you the coding part, because it's like a different 3-4 hour session. For Solidity it would be, but this is how the smart contracts look like. Okay, I'll show you a small smart contract. Then okay, so now if I want to create a smart contract, okay, or add a new smart contract, then how we can go for that is in this way. So I'll go for okay. So I've already written a smart contract over here. Okay, just a basic structure about how does Solidity work. So if you want to work with Solidity, few programming languages, I wouldn't say you can excel at it, but at least have a basic idea. That would be C++, Java, and JavaScript. These three can act as your fundamental languages for this. So first of all, you need to give over here which is a compiler that you are using. So as a Solidity, there are different compiler versions which are available. So these are the different compiler versions which are available. Over here, you have to select which one you can give as per your need. About like how to decide that and everything, that's a completely a different part of the lecture, but that is what this means. Then the next part is you need to start with the contract. So say I have written over here contract keyword. I'm starting with a contract and giving name to the contract. So the contract name is person. After that, now what I want to do in this contract is this is a simple getter setter contract. I want to set a age and set a name, and I want to see like if it is getting deployed on blockchain. Once it is being deployed, can I read it back? Okay, so store it, read it, and enter it, store it, and read it back. Okay, so only for two variables, that is name and age. How do we write it? So I'm saying it is a string variable, name, uint, age. Okay, here there are different data types for writing the integer. So you have uint 256. So those are like different things that are there. Of that, I'm just using uint and saying age. And over here, I have made these variables as private. So access specifiers, whether it should be public, private, what it should be. So it should be private in my case. Then I'm writing a function, like a setter function, to set the name. So how does the function look like over here is function name. After that, the parameters. So what are the parameters I want to accept from the user? So I want to accept a name. Okay, what should be the name? It should be that of type string. So I'm telling of type string. And how should it be? So it's public, like access specifier, it should be public. After that, what I want is whatever name is being entered over here, I'm going to store it in this particular variable name, which I have declared over here. In the same way, how do I get the name or display it back to the user? So for that, I require a getter function. Over here, again, function name is get name. Then its access specifier is public. And also I write the return type over here as well. So what type of data should it return? It should return a string data. Okay. And what should it return? So the name, whatever the user has entered. Then in the same way, for how we have done the setters and getters for name, we do it for the age parameter as well. And one of the thing is that usually what happens in C Java, we can only have a single return data. Over here, you can return multiple data also. You don't need to return a single type of data. Even multiple data returning is allowed. Okay, then, so this is how you can get started. Start with a small smart contract. Then over here, the next part in Solidity compiler, this is about like the different compilers which are available. So I have selected this one, 0.425 plus, since I have written it over here. Then the language source, I had selected Solidity over here, so it has come Solidity. Otherwise, you can get a list of languages also over here. Then I have kept everything same, and I say compile contract. Okay. Once you write over here compile contract, only then you will get the name of your contract over here. Since I had already compiled it, the name was over here, but only after compilation the name comes over here. Okay. So this is the basic part. Now how does it look like? So we go to the next part. So over here, I'll go to this next thing. Now this is the part about deploying and running the transaction. So how do you deploy something on blockchain? Over here, it gives me 3 options. Okay. So environment, what do you mean by environment? Where do I want to deploy a smart contract? So whether it is on a local environment. So what is this JavaScript VM? So in JavaScript VM, what happens is whatever your contract is, it is converted into bytecode. How your Java virtual machine works. So it is converted into the bytecode, and this bytecode is given to the virtual machine, which is used for the local testing. So that is what the JavaScript VM does. Then we have injected Web3. Okay, when I clicked on injected Web3, if you have observed this particular thing came up. Okay, what is this called as? So this is called as MetaMask. This is a wallet. Okay, so this is a wallet for storing, like how you have your bank accounts. So bank account where you store your currency, right? Similar way over here also, you can store your cryptocurrency, okay, which can be used for the transaction. So this is like what I have, some of the Ether. So there are different networks which are there. So Ethereum mainnet, Rupsten, Goerli test network. So what I am using is Goerli test network. So I have just kept some Ether over there, so I can use that for the local transaction to test my data. And the third one is Web3 provider. Okay, so what is Web3 provider? So it is kind of a, if you all know local host, okay. So how do we make a local host for, like before we deploy the actual website, we have a local host to test a website. So like this same thing, there is this particular tool which Ethereum has given us called as Ganache. Okay, so what this Ganache has is, it has fake accounts. So this is the fake Ether which you can use for testing whether your transactions are working properly or no. So for that, if you can see over here, this RPC server has been written. I am copying this particular link, that is HTTP 127.0.0.17545, and I'm pasting it over here. Okay. Once I have, 1 minute, I'll just go again. I'll paste it over here and say okay. Once I have pressed OK over here, see, now I have got all these accounts over here. Which are these accounts? Check this last number, 645887795. So now I have connected over here, see, 645887795. So it is now connected to these fake accounts. So what I can do is, whenever I want to test my contracts, I can use this fake Ether. Okay, now after that, what I do is, what is this? So this is like the maximum, what can be the maximum amount you can say which is allowed for a contract. Now I can go and select my contract and say deploy. Okay, when I clicked on deploy, if you can see over here, 1 minute, I'll just, this particular thing has come over here, block 1. So now what has happened is my first block has been added to the blockchain. What does it have? So it has a transaction hash. I'll just see if I can zoom it here. Now, what does it have? It has a transaction hash code. So this is how the hash code looks like. So this is my block from whom it has come. So this is the, see, this is the address 64 64FA8. So this is this address. So from whom it has come? It has come from this particular person. So that is why it is giving the public address of that particular person. Then this gas and everything we can see later. And what is the hash code? Okay, so this is how the data in blockchain actually looks like. And then now if I want to do some transaction, so what was our contract about? So it was about like if I want to like add some data, right? So if I'm clicking on deploy, okay, so what was our contract about? It was if I want to transact something, so set the age and set the name and check if I can again get back that data. So say if I'm setting the age, I want to set the age to 25. Okay, so I'm writing over here as 25. Okay, and I'm saying transact. Now, if you can see over here, now when I clicked on deploy again, that time this balance became 99. If I'm again saying clicking over here on transact, okay, if I'm clicking over here on transact and I'm going back over here, okay, this will just take some time. It will reduce the Ethereum amount. Okay, so now when I clicked on transact, that time this one more block has been created over here. So over here, from whom did it come? It came from that same person, 64588. Okay, and this was the gas amount which has been used. So what is gas? How much amount was used? Same way, I can set the name also. So say I want to set my name. Name, how do you write it? It's a string value. So I'll write it inside the double quotes and I'll say Lina, my name. And over here, I'll say transact. Okay, so when I clicked on transact, another block was created over here. Okay, this new hash has been created. Now, if I want to get the age back, I'm clicking over here, get age. So what is the data? I got 25 and it is saying over here, there was a call. So from where did the call come? So I can go and trace back my data. Similarly, get name. So over here also, I can go and trace back my data. So the name is coming properly. So I had entered 25 and my name Lina over here. Okay, so the same thing what I entered over here, I'm getting back the same data. Okay, as well as it is getting recorded on blockchain. So this is how the working of blockchain looks like. I'll just quickly go through the other things as well, since there is time limit. Okay, now this is one of the example of use case. So Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. So this was started in 2016 by the government. And what is it aimed at? So it is aimed at providing insurance coverage for the farmers and to support any kind of losses due to unforeseen weather conditions or any kind of disasters which are happening. And for that, we already have a national crop insurance portal which is there in picture, but right now it is using a centralized system. So because of centralized system, what happens is that whatever the data is registered inside in this particular portal, it is through the agencies. Okay. Then even for the insurances, like the data which is paid back, again, there is some middleman which is coming in picture. Also, since it is like a centralized system, there is again a threat of because the data is for the crop conditions is also coming from ISRO and IMD. So again, there is a threat over here, like the security threat which is associated since it's an open portal. So instead of having this as a centralized system, what has been proposed is by NITI Aayog that this particular image is from World Economic Forum, okay? And they are talking about this NITI Aayog project, that what they have said is we can have this entire system on blockchain. If it is on blockchain, what will happen is that whatever the data which is coming in from this insurance company, it is through Oracle. So it's a verified data. Okay, it is like not some data which can be dumped onto the portal. It is a proper verified data. Also, whatever the payments are made, it can be traced back, like what was the performance of crops. It can be traced back by ISRO conditions or like from the insurance companies which is coming, and the payment goes back to the person who it is intended to. There is no middleman which is taking the amount in between. Okay, and also there can be open source community forecast. So right now we cannot have them exactly because we don't know whether it is authentic or no. So with open source community forecast, with blockchain in picture, we can have a consensus among the peer nodes, and even that data can be included over here, so which can give us a better judgment about the forecast conditions. So that is why what has been proposed over here is, instead of having it on a centralized system, we can have it on a blockchain system. Okay. So now we have already seen a lot of things about blockchain right now and how Ethereum works. So coming to the part how we can finalize which type of blockchain to use. So first of all, ऐसा नहीं है कि you just decide today, okay, that I'm going to start using blockchain. Okay, it is not that way. You should use blockchain only if there is an authentic need of that. You cannot create a project for blockchain. There has to be some genuine problem, and then you switch to blockchain. So how do you decide that is that how many number of copies of ledger are available? So whatever data which you have, do you really require like more than one copy of that data to be available always? So say it is something a Word document, you don't require 2 to 3 copies of that Word document, right? But if it is something like a legal contract, then for like its authenticity purpose, or for because it needs to be maintained, it needs to be there for a longer period of time, you need to have multiple copies. So if it is just one copy, then you don't need a blockchain platform. You can go with the traditional ones or a traditional database. If it is more than one copy, then you go and see how many people need to have a visibility of it. So does it need to be in public space, like something kind of a financial application? Then it needs to be in public space, as well as some of its data needs to be private also. So if it needs to be in public space, then you can go for the next part. Else, if it is only the visibility is for only to a particular group of company or an organization, then you go for a permission blockchain. Again, if it is for public, and how does the ledger maintenance happen? Whether it happens by the owner or by any of the users. If it happens by the owner itself, then you go for the permission public shared ledger, like a banking application. Then who is going to maintain the banking application? Even if it's there on blockchain, the bank is only going to maintain it, only for the maintenance purpose. So in that case, we can have a public shared ledger. But whereas like permission public shared ledger, whereas something like Bitcoin or Ethereum, then it is available to the entire public. Everyone takes the decision. In that case, it can be a permissionless public ledger. Then we go for building a blockchain. So what are the prerequisites for that? So you identify what are the challenges. You do the cost benefit analysis. So without blockchain, how much money do you need to put in for a particular project? After with blockchain, will it be something less, or whether it's increasing your cost? So if it's increasing your cost, then you don't go for blockchain, you stick to the traditional application. Then you finalize a use case. What do you mean by use case? So you need to finalize what is the application. You cannot just start that, okay, I want to create a blockchain project. No. First of all, decide what is the application for that. What are the limitations of that particular application? Who are going to be the participants in the network? How the access control needs to be given. So what part of the application needs to be available for public use? What needs to be private? You need to go for that. You identify the type of blockchain, consensus algorithm, smart contract, oracles. Then you identify a development platform. So what we saw right now, that was Ethereum. We'll be seeing one more right now, Hyperledger. So you identify which is a development platform that you require, and then you go for development of application. Okay. And then this is one more platform. So now previously what we had seen is it was Ethereum platform. This is another platform, that is a Hyperledger ecosystem. So this is mainly for the permission network. So it is like mostly the enterprises or the organization companies which are making projects on blockchain, they go for Hyperledger. It's a permission network. And these are the different, we can say, frameworks which Hyperledger has given us for different purposes. What we had even discussed in that table previously. So if it's like a simple application, you start with Fabric. Then if it's an mobile application, you go for Iroha. Also, like for different purposes, there are tools and distributed ledgers which are available over here. Okay. And okay, so now I'll just show you for this particular thing, Hyperledger Fabric. Okay, quickly I'll show it to you for that. So in Hyperledger Fabric, how does the network look like? So say we have two organizations, organization A and organization B. Okay, now each of these organizations, they are going to have their peer nodes. What do you mean by peer nodes? So peer nodes is like the participants. So one participant, another participant, accounts which are going to be there. Okay, so every organization is going to have its own peers or the participants, and there are going to be communication channels between them. So how they are going to interact? They are going to interact through some communication channel which is present between them. Okay, and what is this orderer thing which you are seeing in between? So the responsibility of this orderer is to ensure that the ledger is consistent at any given time. So whatever data is there, when it is like transferring from A to B, the same data is there at each and every point of time. Okay, so matlab integrity is maintained. So who ensures that? So order is going to ensure that. For the students to start with Hyperledger, if you want to go for, you can start best way, instead of going for any video tutorials or any other courses, what you can do is you can start with their documentation. They have a very excellent documentation. Okay, so this is like Hyperledger Fabric. Okay, you just type Hyperledger Fabric documentation and this thing will come. So I'm not showing you everything in detail right now, since with the time constraint. I'll just show you how the network looks like and how you can start and close the network. Okay, so for that, first thing what you will require is you need to install Node.js, that is Node JavaScript, then Node.js. After that, you require something called as Go language, Go language, and Docker. Okay, once all this, so they have given over here everything in detail, what is required, how does the installation start. So prerequisites for the installation, if you click over here, they will give you what are the softwares which are required, what are your operating system requirements. So everything is mentioned over here. Okay, so how do I start over here is, I'll just go to the folder. So now they have given certain sample codes which you can use. So I'm going to one of the sample code. Even one thing for this is you need to have a GitHub account. Okay, so with your GitHub account, you go to the Fabric samples. This is called as Fabric samples, and there is something called as test network. So over here, certain demonstration codes are there which you can use. So I'm opening this with my command prompt or terminal window. Okay, now how do we start the network? So there is a possibility that we might have used the network previously. Okay, so whenever you start any Hyperledger network, the first thing is you shut down. Like, what do you mean by shut down? So in case if something had remained open by mistakenly before, you close it down first. Okay, that is a safe way of ensuring that. Once that is done, then you bring about the network. So I have already created this network over here. Otherwise, how to create it from scratch and everything, they have given it very well in the documentation. Okay, so now I'm starting my network again. Okay, now if you can see over here, I'll just try to zoom it up. Okay, if you can see it over here, see what is coming over here. Yeah, it is still getting created. See, creating peer0.organization1.example, peer0.organization2.example, orderer.example. So whenever you're going to start the network, what is the first thing that is created? So these are the things that is created. These peers which I was talking about over here. So peer 1, peer 2, orderer. So when you start the network, by default, first thing is that for one organization, they will be created. Okay, so this is how it will look like. And then later on, what you can do is you can create a channel. So what is this channel? This channel which is there in between them, between the two organizations. So even they have given the steps very well about how you can go and create a channel. It's very simple. So the steps and everything is very much handy. So you can go and create a channel. if you want a customized name of channel, that also can be created. So over here, my channel is getting created. Then after that, since this is a sample codes which are there, and if you want to query the data, like if you want to understand what is the data that is there inside the blockchain, so you can even query it using get all the assets. So what will be returned to you is a JSON format of data. Okay, this is called as a JSON format. So that will be returned to you. So what is exactly there in the blockchain? So there are 5 assets of different colors, size, who is the owner of that particular asset, what is the value. So all this you can get back. So that is, you can query the channel as well. And once you're done with everything, again, you can close down your network. So your network will be shut down. Okay, so this is like a very basic thing. You can do a lot many things in Hyperledger Fabric. But what we have like tried to give you in this presentation is just how you can kickstart your development with Hyperledger and Ethereum. Then Seema ma'am is there. Ma'am. Seema ma'am. I'll continue. Okay. So now what is the role of blockchain in Industry 4.0? What was our first slide is we are getting prepared for Industry 4.0, right? So what are the different technologies that Industry 4.0 is going to contain? It is going to be a mixture of all these technologies. So we are going to get the sensor data. Then we are going to have artificial intelligence, machine learning, quantum computing, then IoT, robotics, smart logistics, supplier. So over here, for all these things, for one point or another, you're going to require the traceability of data or verifiability of data. So that is where blockchain is going to come into picture. And then this is like, how do you maintain security in blockchain at each and every layer? So how is it checked? So at transaction level, it is checked whether the transactions are validated with certainty. Then are the user accounts secure? After that, whatever the smart contracts are they performing with the intended accuracy? So what is the purpose of smart contract? Is it working for that particular thing or no? Then the distributed organization. So are the operational practices in sound? Then network. So this 51% attack, it is also something which can happen on the network. So if someone gains a control of more than 51% of stake, which is actually very difficult since it's for Bitcoin, it is a very, very long chain. So no one can ideally own that much of data. But in case if 51% attack happens, like someone gets becomes owner of 51% of data, then there is a chance that the network might be compromised. Then governance. So is whatever the decisions are being made by the consensus or the stakeholders in the network, are they proper or no? So the security of blockchain can be comprised only for these particular points. And then we talk about the future of blockchain. So in the previous timeline, we have already discussed about like the different phases of blockchain, that it started with ideation, then proof of concept, prototypes. Then 1718, there was a lot of hype about blockchain. So many new models had come up. Then 1920 was about the pilot projects and production phase. Again, 2020 is about the mainstream adoption. And later on from 2025 onwards, it is about the blockchain maturity. After that, these are some of the top 10 influences of the world, which we have tried to list down over here from this particular source. So they have been very active in the blockchain space. And if you want to have like regular updates about blockchain or about what is happening in blockchain space, so you can follow them on Twitter, LinkedIn, okay, just to keep yourself updated. Then these are the various companies which are working in different domains. So in travel industry, IoT, government industry, energy, insurance. So which are the companies which are actively using the blockchain technology? That is what this particular diagram talks about. So for healthcare, we have DHL, FDA. For supply chain, Walmart is using blockchain very well. For banking, HSBC, Visa, IoT, we have Merck. Then travel, we have Delta, British Airways. And then coming to the part of like what for the students, what are the different careers which are possible in blockchain? So you can start your research in blockchain, become a blockchain researcher, or you can be a developer, architect, blockchain designer, or there is even like Solidity programmer or Hyperledger programmer, quality engineer, project manager, trainer. So these are the different careers which are available in blockchain. Okay. And finally, these are the different blockchain use cases. So actually, we have a course on Udemy. So in this particular PPT, we haven't been able to go very much in depth of blockchain. But in our course, we have discussed over 63 blockchain use cases in detail, like for each and every blockchain industry, like for each and every industry, how blockchain would be playing its role. So it's a free course. You can go and check that on Udemy. Okay. So these are our courses for digital pin and blockchain use cases. All of them are freely available. So you can go register and check it out. And in case of any issues, you can get in touch with us, preferably on LinkedIn. Okay. And these are our current statistics. So currently for Udemy, we have been associated with 14,000 plus students across 146 countries, and our courses have been converted into 42 languages. So yeah, that's it. So in any time you can contact us on LinkedIn.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come and speak over here.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Is there any query?
Can I just contact Seema ma'am once? She just wanted to join at the end.
Okay, ma'am.
She's not picking up the phone. Yeah. If there are any queries, then I can answer. Hello.
Yes. Yes. Hello, ma'am. Yes. Hello, students. If you are having any query, then you can ask to the ma'am.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, you're there.
Ma'am, if the data is stored in a blocks, does it affect its speed?
The speed is like dependent upon which blockchain platform are you using. So for Ethereum, the transaction speed earlier it was too much, but now they have brought it down to 10 seconds. Then Hyperledger, though it is dependent upon like your enterprises which are using. So it is more of platform dependent.
More speed is good or less speed is good?
It is not about more speed or less speed. So like for Bitcoin, something like Bitcoin where it is in public space, you require 10 minutes for confirmation to assure that it is a valid data, as well as for solving the mining, like the proofs. Otherwise for Ethereum, where now they are shifting from proof of work to proof of stake, you don't require it for that duration. That's why they have been able to lessen their speed. Even Seema ma'am is there with us for queries.
I'm very sorry. Somehow there was a problem and I could not join. But I think Lena has done a good job of explaining all the concepts. So if there are any other questions, I can take them now. So any questions?
Hello? Hello,
Yeah.
students. Is there any questions? You can ask to the ma'am.
So basically, this is a very growing field, and there are a lot of companies which are asking questions on this in their technical rounds. It's about blockchain and even other technologies, digital twin, then about AI, ML, and IoT, cloud, fog computing, etc. These are the hot topics in the industry technical rounds. So it is good to learn a lot about these technologies, maybe not in depth, but how they are interrelated together, because none of them exist without the other.
Ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Seema, ma'am, welcome, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
We missed you a lot.
I know. Sir, I'm extremely sorry. I don't know what happened, because somehow I just couldn't get onto both the devices.
Yes. If you could have presented, our students might
I
have got
know.
more
Yes.
benefited.
Yeah.
On behalf of my students only, I will ask, ma'am, like, what will be the scope in industry for this blockchain technology? Like, students wants to know, like, are hearing this about a lot, but exactly how they have to prepare, what they have to do, which course they have to do.
So they should understand the fundamentals of what is blockchain, how it works, and do at least one platform. Try to get some hands-on on one platform. There are a lot of tutorials available online. And understand how it is going to be used, because industries are working on it. And even there are a lot of startups also working in the blockchain domain. They're working on POCs, that they would like to deliver to other industries. So there's a lot of work happening in this area, and it is good to know this technology. And gone are the days where traditional syllabus will be enough.
Okay.
So as compared to other colleges, if you want an edge, if a student wants an edge, then this is important. Also, recently, one more thing what has happened is that there is a trend for pool campus hiring. Because of the pandemic, industries are not going on campus. And I'm sure that, over the period of time, they will stop going to campus. Now, in this scenario, they would like to take up a group of industries in a particular, anywhere in the country together and do pooled campus. So that means for the students, it's a competition not only in the college but also in the pool of whichever students are applying together from various colleges across the country. Hence, in the coming pandemic, after this wave and further, it is very important for students to start learning something different and adding something to the CV. Because beyond BTech, there is some technology which every student should know. And with the pandemic, this is going to become really more important. And also another point I would like to add here is that students should not feel, I want to only join a big company, not a small company. It's a learning everywhere, whether it's a big company or a small company, anywhere there's going to be learning. And if you're getting an opportunity, don't choose, take it. Because technical knowledge, you have technical knowledge, you deliver it, do something with it. But don't choose among the companies that why should I take this one, I will wait to get another one. The job scenarios are going down. We don't have so many jobs in the market. And then quality is going to be important. So adding something different come to your CV is going to be important. And with that, getting prepared. So vacations are there, start learning something new and get ready. That was what I would like to add to blockchain. Yeah.
Ma'am, what is the basic requirement of programming, ma'am? Which programming language should they know? If they want to...
If they want to know, if they want to know and they know one of the languages, they can pick up any one. C, C++, Python, Java. One language you should know well. You should be able to do a deployable project in that domain. A deployable project would be maybe with a small database connectivity, maybe some front end, back end together, and it should be a working project. Because people want to know what is working. They don't want to know, okay, you know how to run a program. Nobody is going to write a straight program. And also another thing what you can do is, the students can go online and look at, HackerEarth, CodeChef, and other competitive platforms and try to solve problems there using their own language. So one language is enough in the industry. The demand is not for all languages. Demand is any one industry and how you can learn on your own. Yeah.
So, any students, if you're having any queries, so ma'am is there. So, Lina
Yeah,
ma'am is
yeah.
there, madam, Dr. Seema ma'am is there. So, you can ask related to any what we call efficiency to learn or
Yeah,
related
yeah.
to company's requirement. So, what is the
Ma'am,
future
are there
scope?
any- Sorry, sorry.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Sridhar,
Yeah.
continue, Sridhar.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am, are there any restrictions on blockchain by the government or other software or the restrictions?
No, restrictions will come on Bitcoin and others are from the government, but will not come on blockchain per se. Because see, recently what has happened is that in the IT field, data is across the globe. So wherever the data is residing, that country laws will prevail, but then data sharing is there everywhere. In fact, when you log into any device which is connected to the internet, they will ask you, are you allowing me to share your data? So data rules are going to exist, but for blockchain per se, there will not be any rules.
And what is the connectivity between blockchain and Bitcoin, ma'am?
No, actually, Bitcoin is one type of blockchain which was built earlier, and from there, after using it for Bitcoin as an application, it was brought into finance, and then it came into other fields.
Okay, whether
So,
Indian students should go for any development related to Bitcoin or not, ma'am? What you suggest?
So Bitcoin basically there's no development as such. Development is happening on Ethereum to build a blockchain and use it for some use case or an application. Bitcoin is only collecting money, mining and getting coins. That's a very different thing. It's like stock trading. But in stock trading, you buy stocks. Here you can buy Bitcoins by mining. So giving your computing power and mining, and then you'll get some Bitcoins. So it's a very different field. It's like an investment and working for it. While building a blockchain is an entirely different, like a project activity.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Shubhangi, ma'am, over to you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes. Is there any questions from student side? Okay, there are no questions.
Yeah, you can check out our courses on Udemy. You can check out, you can get to us on LinkedIn or Quora or on my website. Anywhere you can get in touch with us and we can be of help to you as required.
Okay, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for giving us an opportunity. And I'm very extremely sorry that I could not contribute in the session.
No, ma'am.
Hello, students. So you have to fill the feedback forms, and the feedback form is working, and only one response will be submitted at a time. Okay. So thank you, ma'am. So final last point.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So, ma'am, it gives me immense pleasure to propose the vote of thanks. It extends my sincere thanks to the resource persons, Dr. Seema Shah ma'am and Professor Leena Nadkar ma'am, for sparing their valuable time with us. And I take this opportunity to thank our respected principal sir of Shreyas College of Engineering for providing the guidance to conduct this webinar. Thank you, our HOD sir, Professor E. Raj Chirchi sir, and the coordinator, Professor Rubina Shah ma'am, and all the faculties and students for their presence. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you. Can
Thank
we
you, ma'am.
leave now? Can we leave now, Shubhangi, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Once
Okay.
again, thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am. Students, your feedback link is working. I had checked.
Seema ma'am, you can leave now, ma'am.
Yes, sir, I'll do that. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thanks a lot, ma'am. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
And hence you submitted your feedback. Automatically, you can get the certificates.
No, ma'am. Feedback link is not working.
I had checked right now.
No, ma'am.
Okay, just don't leave the meeting. I again check it and send back to you. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. Otherwise, I will put it on your group. ठीक है?
Okay, ma'am.
Wait for some time.